What's going on, everybody? It's Young Man. Today is August 10th, 2026, and today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin strategy and MetaPlanet. These are the three topics that we've been talking about and are going to continue to talk about. Today, I just want to talk about my base case for Bitcoin, some of the basic ideas behind my Bitcoin thesis, as well as how my case for Bitcoin relates to some of the current events that have been happening. And before I get into that, I did take a pretty long break from making these videos. I was just trying to spend some time focusing on some other things, trying to enjoy my summer, playing some golf, spending time with family, just investing my time in some other areas of my life. And I think it came at a good time to do that because, frankly, a lot of the energy within the Bitcoin space, at least what I see on the internet, is just it doesn't align with the Bitcoin thesis. It doesn't align with why I became interested in Bitcoin. There's just a lot of hostility. There's infighting. We have the debate over the protocol causing a lot of infighting. We have the debate over treasury companies and Sailor and a lot of these things that just might seem important right now, but if you zoom out, they're not important. And as Bitcoiners, we should be zooming out. We shouldn't be at each other's throats. A lot of us got into this space because it offers something else that's not as divisive as traditional spaces, especially on the internet. And I haven't been in Bitcoin very long, but what I hear from people who have been is that this happens every cycle. In the deep, dark, uh, the in the thick of the bear market, people just get hostile. There's infighting and there's energy that is not what we want to align with. So I think my hiatus came at a good time. And honestly, it's a time where I'm probably not going to get many views on these videos. I already don't get a lot of views, but with sentiment where it is, I'd probably get even less views. And so I just had to make a decision about where I'm going to spend my time. With that being said, I do plan to get back into making these videos because I do enjoy it, but just wanted to give an update about that. So, some of the things that have been going on in markets recently um, that I find to be important would be the new chairman of the Federal Reserve, Kevin Warsh. He was sworn in a couple weeks ago, and no one really has a read on him because it's still up in the air if he's going to be hawkish or dovish. Um, I mean, it's up in the air if he's going to be hawkish or dovish to markets. There are people that are trying to make a case that he's going to be tough on inflation. He's going to be a hawk. He's going to raise rates. But I think the reality is that he can try to do that and he can put on this facade that he's going to do that. But regardless of what he does, it ends in printing money. It ends in quantitative easing. It ends in easing of the monetary policy to the point of pretty severe inflation. He can try to raise rates. I don't think he'll do this, but he can try to. But all that's going to do is put a bunch of pressure on the bond market, put a bunch of pressure on global markets into an oil spike, and they're going to have to print a ton of money to get out of that. Or he cannot do that. He can just do nothing, and the bond market will probably run into an issue either way, and they'll have to print money. The way I see it, the way a lot of intelligent people who I listen to's content see it, is that there's no way to move forward that doesn't involve printing money. And I think a lot of the people who are heavily invested in Bitcoin, a lot of people who see Bitcoin as an answer, they see it as this answer because there is a problem, and the problem can be described in a lot of different ways. But in the most simplest way, it's that The central banks have to print money. The United States government has to print money. On a long-term view, money will be printed. And if you're holding something that's not scarce, the value of that will be debased. And that's why I save in Bitcoin. So the most basic way to describe my Bitcoin thesis is that there are central planners who are, it's their job to keep things functioning. It's their job to keep the bond market functioning. And the only tool that they have to do that is this printing press where they print our currency. And it's not even real, it's not even physical dollars that are being printed. It's keystrokes on a computer that are saying there's this many dollars, now there's this many dollars. So if you're not long scarcity, if you're long US dollar 10-year bonds, you are being basically you're getting destroyed by that concept. That process is destroying your livelihood. If you are long scarcity, your wealth in dollar terms, which is the way that we're going to measure our wealth probably for the foreseeable future, will go up. And you're just protected in a lot of ways if you're long scarcity. That's gold, silver, Bitcoin, desirable real estate. There are other ways beyond Bitcoin to protect yourself. I just believe Bitcoin is the best way to protect yourself from this process. So without getting off onto too much of a tangent, Kevin Warsh is in the news. What is he? Is he a bear? Or I'm sorry, is he a hawk or is he a dove? Should we be bearish? Should we be bullish? Short term, medium term, long term on things like Bitcoin. I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin has a little bit further to go as far as this bear market, at least time pain. I don't know how much price pain we have left, but we have time pain left, the way I see it. But I'm still feeling like we're at a point where we should be adding. I've been adding to my Bitcoin position, to my MetaPlanet position, to my strategy position. These are the three main things that I buy. I'm buying all of them. We might go lower. I'll buy more. I have a little bit of cash on the side for if we do go lower, but I think the risk reward of waiting um, is not, it's probably not wise to wait for this perfect bottom that some people think might come. I think Bitcoin under $70,000 is a steal. Strategy at $100 is a steal. MetaPlanet at $1.50 is a steal. I think these things are sitting there for basically for free. And every time there's a bottom, every cycle when we go down, 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 everyone looks back at it as why was I not aggressively buying? I think we're at that point right now, and I don't want to be caught thinking why was I not aggressively buying? So I'm aggressively buying. And like I said, I think whoever is in charge of the Federal Reserve, it doesn't change what their job is. And their job is to manage monetary policy in a way that the whole system doesn't blow up tomorrow. And like I said, their only tool to do that is the process of printing money. So it's like they say if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And if the only tool you have is printing money, every problem looks like we need to print money. So I don't have a lot of opinions about uh, Kevin Warsh, what he's going to do, what he's not going to do. I think he got in there um, for a reason. And I think that this presidential administration is not one that is going to try to, they might be less dovish than some of these more left, more socialist politicians, but they're not that different. And they're also people who benefit when the currency gets weakened. Look who's in there. Look who's in this administration. Like I don't think Howard Lutnick cares if the dollar gets weak. And at the same time, like I don't think Donald Trump cares if the dollar gets weak. This real estate mogul. at the same time, it's not even up to them. It's up to the bond market and it's up to the the ability of the country to sustain itself in global markets. And if you listen to what these people are saying, like what the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is saying, he's writing op-eds about Hamiltonian economics, which is basically a shift out of being reserve currency. And to do that, you need a neutral reserve asset, which at this point it's not Bitcoin. I'm not saying it's Bitcoin, but it's gold. And if gold moons, Bitcoin moons. And this is also a guy who's quoting Satoshi on Twitter. People want to act like Bitcoin is this like far out thing that the government would never allow to happen because they need the dollar to be strong. They don't need the dollar to be strong. Matter of fact, they need the dollar to be weak. There's all this talk about reshoring. You don't reshore with a strong currency. You reshore when everything is cheap in dollars because you can print them and because if the dollar is strong, it costs way more to do these things that need to be done to reshore. They want to whack the currency. They don't have political cover to do it because the middle class is getting destroyed. The upper middle class is also feeling the pain of it. Gas is soaring. All these things are happening, and it doesn't seem right politically, but they're things that need to be done for the country to sustain itself on a long-term view. So it's almost like the idea that inflation and the value of the dollar going down, the idea that that is not in the government's best interest is wrong. It is in their best interest. And the top 1% is like the oligarchs that have a lot of control and influence on this government. They don't care if the value of the dollar goes down because they're rich and they have assets. Like just like you and I who have Bitcoin, we don't care if the value of the dollar goes down because we save in Bitcoin. These people save in businesses and real estate and assets and NASDAQ. Like when inflation gets higher and the dollar gets weaker, they're protected and they're the ones making the decisions. So I just wanted to speak on that because I think a lot of people still have this idea that the US dollar needs to be strong and the US military backs the dollar and the powers that be care about the dollar being strong. They don't care at all. And the Secretary of the United States Treasury, Scott Bessent, he's a career Wall Street guy and he's quoting Satoshi Nakamoto on Twitter. He's well aware of what's going on and he's well aware of where things are going to be headed. The president's sons have a Bitcoin company. Like these people who are in the know, they don't touch the currency. They touch they heavily invest in scarcity. And that's what I'm trying to do and that's what I'm trying to communicate to people is that we need to be long scarcity. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter if you're just barely getting by and you're making your money to pay your bills but you have $100 a week that you're putting away, put it away in the right place. Don't put it in a bank account. Put it in put it in cheap Bitcoin. That's my message. And that's not financial advice because I'm not a financial advisor. So don't sue me. I'm just speaking on some ideas that I have. And if I could give a message to myself in the past, it would be to buy Bitcoin because I definitely had $100 when Bitcoin was $100 and I could have a whole coin. And there's going to be a point in time where Bitcoin's $600,000 a coin and I could have been buying it for 60,000, but I wasn't. And so I make these videos because they might pop up on your YouTube algorithm. And if you listen to what I'm saying, it might give you the motivation to learn more about Bitcoin and then eventually save in Bitcoin. Because the bottom line is that we shouldn't be going to work to earn dollars that the Federal Reserve is printing. No man should work for something another man can print. That's the basic idea. And it doesn't have to be Bitcoin. You can try gold, you can try silver. There's a list of things you can try. I've just found that one is better than the other. So it's not it's not in my interest to be buying gold. If I had the facilities to hold my gold and store it, not in my sock drawer, I would buy a lot of gold because I also really admire the idea of precious metals because a lot of the mechanics of them and the way that they trade is similar to Bitcoin. But Bitcoin, I can verify and I can move across borders and I can store in my head with a seed phrase and I can send it across the world in 30 seconds. There's just things about it that are better. So that's my long-term plan, is to go to work to make fiat to exchange for Bitcoin. And I'm going to be doing that no matter what the Bitcoin price is because over a long time horizon, the price is going to be higher than the price is today. And so this video has been a bit of a rant. I didn't even talk about some of the things I wanted to talk about, but I don't like to go on too long with these. So the main thing that I did talk about is Kevin Warsh and the Federal Reserve. But something else that I have to mention is that a couple days ago, the United States Treasury intervened and bought yen in order to strengthen the yen to USD. That is a huge moment. Not only does this signal that they're going to be printing money and they're going to be intervening in every way they can to keep the bond market functioning, it signals that they had to do something in a foreign currency that they haven't had to do since 1998. They haven't bought yen to strengthen the yen against the dollar since 1998. There's been some very volatile times and some very concerning times for the bond market and for US markets between 1998 and today, and they didn't even do that. They never did that in 2008. They never did that during COVID, but they're doing it now. Why is that? What is happening? What are we on the brink of? We're on the brink of the bond market having some serious problems and other nations' bond markets having serious problems and having to take money out of the United States treasuries to buy their own, to financially engineer their own bond markets to keep them functioning. Other G7 nations might have to move money out of the United States, and they can't have that. The United States cannot have that. And if that does happen, that money needs to be made up for, and it's probably going to be printed. If things continue to trend the way they're trending, Bitcoin has to be at 200K. It has to be at 250K. It's supposed to be at 150 right now, but things are happening in global markets and in the United States that suggests that the dollar needs to get way weaker. And Bitcoin has 21 million coins. You can never make more coins. So if the dollar's weaker and Bitcoin is Bitcoin, one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, the valuation of that one Bitcoin in dollars is going to be significantly higher, and that's why I'm aggressively buying. I would recommend people look into what happened. I think it was August, it was Friday, I think August 1st or 2nd, the beginning of August. It was leaked that the United States Treasury intervened with the yen to dollar, and that is a very big deal. All while there are various other things happening that are concerning for the currency. All while we're in an ongoing war that seems to not be ending anytime soon. All while energy prices are soaring. All while the this situational awareness, well-known hedge fund, is being forced to sell. There seems to be an unwind happening. There seems to be a turning point in markets going on right now. And I think things are about to get very interesting. And I think to bring it back to what I was talking about at the start of the video, all of this infighting and all of this doom and gloom sentiment within the Bitcoin space, that's going to be looked back upon as ridiculous and nonsensical. And that's why I don't pay it much attention. But if you watch the video, I appreciate you listening. I did want to go in a couple different directions with this video, but I found myself ranting. I guess it's because I haven't made a video in a long time, but I'll make one soon, touch on some other subjects. But thanks again for listening and um, subscribe if you haven't.